Nick Wilson, candidate for Central Committee, 73rd Assembly District here in the state of California. Today I want to talk a little bit about what's going on with the 45th Congressional District. That's the district that I live in and have lived in pretty much my whole life. Been through a little bit of turmoil here. This month I did attend the Republican Central Committee meeting, as I normally do, and there was a number of endorsements issued. The chairman of the party came out and gave another big speech about how important it is for us to endorse in these particular races, because these particular races are targeted. These are races that are being targeted because we believe that we can win them back. And by we, apparently what we mean is these are districts that have been told to us to target by the state party, which is kind of an interesting dynamic. The state party apparently knows better than the local party, the OCGOP, as to what districts need to be targeted. Luckily, most of these races, and I maybe think in all of the races in which the endorsements were just issued, there was a single Republican running. And that makes it really easy. If there's only one Republican candidate, it makes it pretty likely that that person's going to get the endorsement, and I don't have too many qualms about that, even when that person happens to be a terrible Republican. And by terrible Republican, I mean somebody who has a terrible voting record or something within that same realm. Publicly stated positions that are contrary to what the party platform has suggested, or oftentimes flaunts those things not just as being outside of the party, but actually using those as strengths. So ultimately, we did issue a number of endorsements. Conspicuously missing from that list was the 45th Congressional District. Now, this is the district that used to be Mimi Walters. Mimi Walters was has been in politics for quite some time. She was a congressperson here in the 45th, and she was objectively terrible. Her voting record is horrendous. If you're not sure that that's the case, feel free to do a little bit of research online. Places that I would normally direct people to go, or organizations that actually track voting records and issue scores, like the Heritage Foundation, Conservative Review, and Freedom Works. Obviously, Heritage and Conservative Review are very conservative leaning. Freedom Works is a little bit more libertarian leaning, and I like to use that as being a libertarian leaning Republican. Also gives me a little bit of perspective. They may not agree entirely on everything, which gives you a little bit of an opportunity to see what are some of those varying viewpoints and where you might fall that's different from what those organizations would say. Ultimately, if you look up Mimi Walters' voting history on any of those sites, you will see dismal scores. So she was terrible, and she deserved to lose. She should have been primaried by a Republican who would have voted better, and that would have maybe saved the seat. But as we all know, here in the election of 2018, she did lose her seat, and this district and all of the districts here in Orange County went from red to blue. We now have Katie Porter. Now, obviously, Katie Porter being a Democrat is also terrible, arguably more terrible than Mimi Walters is, when we're just talking about voting record. But we're not going to get much success comparing Katie Porter's record to what Republicans should be doing. She's not a Republican. She's going to do what Democrats do. So we're just talking today about Republicans. So this seems to me to be a district that should be targeted. This seems to me to be a district that is important, that is close, that should be potentially something that we can flip. Why wasn't it? Well, I have a little theory about that. At the Central Committee meeting this month, there were actually 4 different Republican candidates there for the 45th Congressional District. One I do not know, some guy. The next one would be the 2 big ones that everybody does know. Greg Rath's Mission Viejo City Council, Don Sedgwick, who is Laguna Hills City Council. Both of these guys are up-and-comers. They're on their city councils. They've been around for a little while. They have a bit of a record and seem to be generally pretty conservative and good contenders for the seat. And then fourth, we have Peggy Huang. And Peggy is a member of the executive board of the OCGOP, and she is a Yorba Linda councilwoman. The second point is significant because Yorba Linda isn't in the 45th Congressional District. Peggy was not even a resident of the district. So it's somewhat interesting that she would run. I guess I could see somebody running in a different congressional district if we didn't have a decent candidate there in the district. That would make all the sense in the world to say, look, we just can't find somebody who wants to run in this district. Therefore, we're going to pull somebody who lives in hopefully a neighboring district or somewhere nearby, who may have a shot to at least have a dog in the fight, if you will. But it's very strange, or it seems at first glance to be very strange, to have somebody from outside the district running when we have, as we've already established, two very decent candidates ready to go. And I think that in that breakdown, you can see why the OCGOP did not go ahead and call the 45th a targeted district. They don't want to call it a targeted district because that would then trigger a fight amongst these candidates who need to find out how to vie for the position to show themselves to be the best candidate leading into the primary. Peggy, being a member of the executive board, is obviously deeply entrenched with the political establishment. The political establishment is backing her. And so we know that that's what's going to happen, is they're not going to go out and try to jockey for getting the body to issue an endorsement because they're concerned that the person they want to have endorsed is not actually going to earn the endorsement when put up against the other candidates. Ultimately, she's not a good candidate. She's not charismatic. She's not been a person of distinguished leadership that people have seen and noticed. There's just nothing going on for her. I don't know what she's doing in the race. So it's interesting that she's there. Ultimately, there's a little bit of good news in the fact that she's in the race, because that tells us that at least Mimi Walters isn't going to come back and try again. The establishment would also never allow that. You can't have two establishment candidates coming at it at the same time. So this decision was made in back room some time ago. So at the end of the day, people like myself, people who are concerned about this seat, should also be very concerned that the Republican Party of Orange County was not inclined to issue any kind of an early endorsement or to call this a targeted or important race. I happen to think it's very important. Obviously, I happen to think that between Greg Raths and Don Sedgwick, we have two very good candidates, and I'm very curious to see who's going to come out amongst the two of them and distinguish themselves. So far, I have seen Greg come out on Twitter and other places and take some shots at Peggy, which I think is good. You will oftentimes hear from more establishment types that the idea that we shouldn't be critical of other Republicans, that it's damaging to our chances to win races if we go out and we say bad things about other Republicans. And I think that that's absolute nonsense. I think that the point of a primary and the point of the party itself should be there to make sure that we are choosing the best candidate, not just the person who we think can win, but the person we think is going to win and then represent our values the best. We don't win in this county, and we lost this county by doing exactly what we're trying, or at least the party establishment is trying to do now. When we put candidates out there that don't actually respect our values, that don't share our views, and don't vote accordingly, that's what damages the Republican brand. No one believes what Republicans have to say if, when they get to office, they do something other than what they've said that got them elected. So we lost this county. It wasn't stolen from us in some kind of voter fraud thing. Obviously, ballot harvesting took a lot of Republicans by surprise. But ultimately, I'm a strong believer that we can win these races by putting out candidates that have ideas that are new and different and competitive, as opposed to trying to put out candidates that resemble the other party closely, and the idea that we can somehow trick people into thinking voting for us is just like voting for them with some small differences. We need big differences here, people. We need candidates that will stand out. We need candidates that will stand up. So Greg's come out. He's taking some shots at Peggy. I appreciate it. Peggy doesn't live in the district. That should be said every time her name is mentioned. I'm hoping to see Don also kind of chime in, and the two of them get together, at least in some level, and say, look, one of us is the choice. This person is not. Peggy, running your district, good luck to you. Hopefully that works out for you in the future. Obviously, you have some big political ambitions, but this isn't the place or the time. But on the other side of things, I do have some reservations still about both Greg and Don. Don and Greg have both been playing a little bit close to the establishment and have been for some time. Greg ran against Mimi last time around for the congressional seat. Obviously, Mimi being the darling of the establishment, she got establishment backing, which meant that Greg was forced to try to rally his support from the base, which he did a decent job of. He got a number of votes, and he's built support ever since. My concern is that I have seen him drifting closer and closer to the establishment, trying to play friendly with them. And at the end of the day, they don't want him. the establishment is not interested in supporting him. So I'm really hoping that Greg will decide to focus back on the people and the citizens and start to build more of a grassroots coalition of voters, as opposed to, trying to make sure that he's in lots of photos and lots of places with all these establishment Republicans that don't support him. Don's played it pretty close to the chest. He's made some good videos. He's out there doing a bit of campaigning, but he's not come out in any way that I think reflects the kind of fighter that we're going to need. First of all, we need someone who's going to go to the Congress and be ready to fight. But we also need somebody who's ready to fight here once the general election comes around. Katie Porter might be wrong, but she's no slouch. There's going to be debates. There's going to be public debates. There's going to be debates in the media. There's going to be mailers and things like that. And we need somebody who's ready to stand up and say, look, I can talk the talk. I can walk the walk. I know what I'm talking about. And I just don't know that either Greg or Don has really distinguished themselves against each other in those regards. So ultimately, please keep an eye on the 45th. If you're not in our district, it's still important. Those of us in the 45th could really appreciate outside help, but inside we do need to see, the citizens get together, take a critical look, and be ready to say, this is what a Republican that represents the 45th district looks like, and this is someone that does not, and it's totally okay for us to do that. It's actually crucial to the future and success of our party, that we're able to distinguish between bad and good Republicans. Just because someone calls himself a Republican doesn't mean that they deserve your support. So please keep watching my videos. Please subscribe, share them with your friends, and feel free to reach out to me if you have friends, family members who live in California's 73rd Assembly District that are registered as Republicans. I want to meet them. If you know people who fit that description, who were formerly registered Republicans, who have changed their voter registration because of their absolute disgust with the party, I definitely want to talk with those people too. And ultimately, I'm going to tell them they need to re-register as Republicans. I'm disgusted by the party at every level as well. But the only way we're going to be able to clean house and make a difference in this is to make sure that we're able to show up and vote in the more important election. And the more important election for me is always going to be the primary. That's when we choose what the heart and soul of our party is going to be, who our representatives and champions are going to be. And if you sit that out, if you don't register, you don't get to be a part of that. Obviously, in the state of California, we have the jungle primary. You'll get to vote in the primary no matter what. But if you're not registered as a Republican, you can't vote for me. You can't vote for the leadership of the Republican Party. And unfortunately, they make a lot of decisions. And unfortunately, they have made a lot of bad decisions. So thanks again for watching. Hopefully be checking in with you guys soon.